This is ITV1 with London Tonight and the national news now with Trevor MacDonald.
A new weapons crisis tonight. America's top spy says Saddam was not an imminent threat. And as the controversy takes a new turn, Michael Howard calls for Tony Blair to resign. Also tonight, interest rates and mortgages go up to try to stop us spending. Terror warning tonight for British tourists going to Spain. And rising from the depths of history, Hitler's greatest battleship. Good evening. It quite simply refuses to go away. And today the stakes were raised even higher on both sides of the Atlantic in the continuing controversy over Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. In Washington, the head of the CIA, George Tenet, insisted that his agents never said that Saddam's weapons posed an imminent threat. But that was the basis on which this country went to war. And on the basis that Mr. Blair didn't know what kind of weapons carried the 45-minute warning, the Conservatives said the Prime Minister should resign. More on that in a moment. First, though, to Washington, where Mr. Bush keeps saying going to war was the right thing to do. Robert Moore is there tonight. Robert?
Well, that's right, Trevor. Tonight, the great debate about intelligence failures in Iraq continues on both sides of the Atlantic. And today, America's top spy master emerged from the shadows to defend his analysts and his agents. But in the process, he may have further embarrassed George Bush and Tony Blair.
In the intelligence business, you are almost never completely wrong or completely right.
Responding to mounting criticism, the CIA's director admitted his spies had failed to penetrate Saddam's government. But he also insisted his experts had never exaggerated the Iraqi threat, nor misled the president.
They never said there was an imminent threat. Rather, they painted an objective assessment for our policymakers of a brutal dictator who is continuing his efforts to deceive and build programs that might constantly surprise us and threaten our interests.
Less than a teaspoonful of dry anthrax.
But exactly a year ago today at the UN, with George Tenet sitting behind him, Colin Powell had certainly suggested the threat was imminent and based on indisputable facts.
Every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources.
But on the road in South Carolina, the president was today defending the war, saying that even if illegal weapons are not found, Saddam's intentions were clear.
The liberation of Iraq was an act of justice. We know Saddam Hussein had the capability to produce weapons of mass destruction.
It's clear we've got a problem now.
But the man who searched in vain for those weapons told ITV News it would be better to acknowledge a huge intelligence failure.
To be honest, I don't think anyone thought, I certainly didn't think, it would take this long to find them.
The applause for the CIA director may be short-lived. The quality of his agency's intelligence is now the subject of multiple investigations. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
Here, the call for Mr. Blair to resign came from the Conservative leader, Michael Howard. But Mr. Blair also came under attack from his former Foreign Secretary. Robin Cook suggested Mr. Blair did know the reference to 45 minutes notice applied to battlefield and not to long-range missiles. Here's our political editor, Nick Robinson.
This was D-Day, Dossier Day, the day we rushed to relay the news of the threat posed by Saddam, the threat the government wanted us to fear. His missiles could hit Cyprus. He had chemical and biological stockpiles. An attack could be 45 minutes away. But by what? Tony Blair admitted yesterday in the Commons that he hadn't known and he hadn't asked. A confession which the Tory leader dubbed a gross dereliction of duty, enough to convince him the Prime Minister should go.
He didn't bother to ask the question, were these weapons that could only be used on the battlefield, or could they have been put on the end of missiles and targeted at British troops in Cyprus? And if it really is the case that he didn't bother to ask that basic question, I think he should seriously be considering his position today.
Do you think he should resign?
Yes.
Robin Cook, in the cabinet in the run-up to war, cast doubt on his leader's words.
I knew Iraq had only battlefield weapons because I asked the chairman of the Joint Intelligence Committee. It is not hard to credit that at no point between the September dossier and the March debate he did not explain to the Prime Minister the crucial distinction between battlefield weapons and medium-range weapons.
Under questioning, the Defence Secretary said he too had known that the 45-minute warning referred only to battlefield weapons. His colleagues said they didn't know what the fuss was about.
Well, I mean, I doubt very much whether during the Second World War people expected Winston Churchill to go around asking whether people were using mortars or whether they were, exactly what kind of shell they were using and so on. It was his job to look at the overall strategy and to try and take the major decisions, and that's where our Prime Minister was.
Tonight, he was in Brussels, hoping, believing that the public are tired of what one friend called this nitpicking.
Nick, can it be that Tony Blair never asked the exact nature of the threat from Saddam Hussein?
Well, Robin Cook clearly doubts it, doesn't he? But Downing Street insist, surprising though it is, that that's the case. And that he knew what was really important, Trevor. He knew our troops could be hit either on the battlefield or hundreds of miles away, and they were prepared with protective clothing. Now, of course, intelligence doesn't do detail. We heard that from the CIA director just then, didn't we? So why on earth did he talk in detail if he didn't know what it meant? Perhaps, and it's hard to escape this conclusion, because it made good headlines.
And Nick, surprised that Mr. Howard chose today to call for the Prime Minister to resign?
I was surprised, yes. I thought the Tories wanted to move off this story, that they'd frankly got bored, as many in the public have already become. And more to the point, many of Mr. Howard's own senior colleagues were surprised. They fear he got it wrong. They fear that he's deployed the ultimate political weapon too early and to too little effect. Mr. Howard's reply, though, is a simple one. I served, he says, in a cabinet at wartime, and this was no way to run a war.
Nick Robinson, thank you. The cost of mortgages and bank loans are on their way up. As predicted, the Bank of England put up its interest rate today by 1/4%. And they hinted it would keep going up until people stop borrowing so much on their credit cards and borrowing to buy houses. Here's our business editor, Caroline Kerr.
This was the day when the Bank of England got tough with consumers. It sent out a clear message. It's time to stop living beyond your means. The question is, are we listening?
Many in the financial markets think that we're going to see interest rates keep going up to about 4.5% this year. My own personal feeling is that the bank will keep on putting interest rates up if people keep on borrowing. What the bank is essentially now saying is, over to you borrowers, if you borrow more, we're going to put rates up.
Today's figures showing that record numbers of new cars were sold last month will have confirmed the bank's view that spending is out of control. But will a 1/4% rise make any difference?
At the higher end of the market, the luxury end of the market, on purchases where we're saying spending more than £1,000, that's where we'll start thinking about the interest rate rise and the impact on our finances. But for the average spend on the high street, losing £10 to £30 because of mortgage payments going up, it won't have that much of an impact.
Debbie Clark has just remortgaged to do a loft conversion. She'd already borrowed £80,000 but added another £12,000 to her mortgage, bringing it to a total of £92,000. How high would rates have to rise before she'll stop spending?
Above 5%, I would think. I would then really tighten my belt and look at my finances and my spending, and luxuries probably would take a bit of a back seat.
The Bank of England raised its voice a little today. The committee doesn't want to end up shouting at us, but it will. It'll end up yelling until we hear the message. Caroline Kerr, ITV News, at the Bank of England.
The cases of more than 100 teachers and care workers convicted of child abuse could be reopened because of a landmark court ruling today. The Court of Appeal quashed a conviction of Anwar Sheikh. The prosecution accepted that his conviction for abusing children 20 years ago was unsafe. The former care worker had served 2 years of an 8-year sentence. The royal coroner holding an inquest into the death of Princess Diana is in Paris tonight. Michael Burgess is expected to visit the scene of the crash in which the Princess of Wales died 6.5 years ago. There was a worrying warning tonight for anyone planning a holiday in Spain. The terrorist group ETA, which wants a separate state for Basques, is threatening to attack tourist resorts again. The Foreign Office says holidaymakers should be careful, but so far they're not telling people to avoid going to Spain. Shuri Ghosh has our report.
The chilling result of ETA's bloody campaign for an independent Basque state. These were the scenes last summer when the group bombed hotels in Alicante and Benidorm. It's deliberately targeted Spain's tourism industry, an industry that pulls in 10 million British visitors a year. Now ETA has issued a stark warning. In a statement delivered to travel operators throughout Europe, it said from now on the front line of the struggle has as a target Spanish tourist interests, which will be active throughout the entire year. ETA are not responsible for the safety of foreign tourists who come to Spain to enjoy their holidays. The warning provoked a mixed reaction from British travellers.
Proof's of the pudding, isn't it, really? See what happens, but something to be cautious about, I think.
I mean, the last thing you need when you go on holiday is worrying about terrorists.
I'm pretty philosophical about these things. I think if your number's up, your number's up.
Spain is the top holiday destination for Brits. Travel operators say the terrorist threat should be put into perspective.
In many places in Europe, there are threats from terrorists, and ETA is just one of those groups, and that they have threatened to attack tourist destinations in Spain, and we have to be aware of that, but I don't think we should be worried about it.
The Foreign Office website now includes ETA's warning in its travel advice, but doesn't suggest that people stay away. The Foreign Office has confirmed the renewed threat to the tourist industry in Spain and says holidaymakers could be at risk. Though there have been relatively few casualties from ETA attacks in the past, the advice to travellers is to be extra vigilant in public places. Shuri Ghosh, ITV News at the Foreign Office.
The family of a 9-year-old boy who was killed by a hit-and-run driver have condemned his 2-year jail sentence as no justice. Kamel Kadril, an illegal immigrant, was given 16 months for possessing a false passport, but only 8 months for driving offences linked to the death of Callum Oakford. The judge questioned why Kadril had not been charged with causing death by dangerous driving. It's a scandal that could bring down the government of Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. Today, he was questioned for 2 hours by police investigating claims that he once accepted bribes via his son from a property developer. From Jerusalem, our Middle East correspondent Julian Mannion reports.
The Prime Minister raced into Jerusalem to meet the police. Their investigating team came to his official residence looking for answers to allegations of bribery in what's become known as the Greek island scandal. The island, now linked to Ariel Sharon's name, was supposed to become a tourist mecca. Sharon's son Gilad allegedly received large payments from an Israeli businessman who wanted to develop it. The businessman is Sharon's longtime supporter David Appel. He is now facing charges of attempting to bribe Sharon, who was then foreign minister, to help him obtain permission from the Greek authorities to develop the island. Apple denies the charges, and last night on Israeli television he burst out laughing when asked if he would testify against the Prime Minister. If Sharon were formally charged, he would almost certainly have to stand down. It's another crisis in a turbulent career.
And you're there?
Today, Sharon insists that he knew nothing about the payments to his son Gilad, who is seen in a secret video asking an advisor if the case could put him in prison. One man who believes that Sharon will win through is his former spokesman, Arnon Perlman.
I remember one of the first day of my position, I came to him with a newspaper and said, listen, they wrote about you this and that, and he said, listen, calm down. There were so many things written about me all around the world. This is not going to intimidate me.
In his meeting with the police, Ariel Sharon apparently denied all wrongdoing. It will now be up to Israel's new Attorney General to decide if the evidence is strong enough to charge a sitting Prime Minister at a time of continuing conflict with the Palestinians. Julian Mannion, ITV News, Jerusalem.
There's more to come on the ITV News tonight, including: could the pride of Hitler's navy really be raised from its watery grave? And mum's the word. Lennox Lewis's #1 fan tells him it's time to go. That's coming up after the break. Welcome back. For more than 60 years, a German warship, the pride of the Nazi Navy, has lain undisturbed in waters off the coast of Uruguay in South America. The Graf Spee was scuttled by its own captain in the first few months of the Second World War. Today, a huge salvage operation began to raise the ship. Here's our senior correspondent, James Mates.
On the sea floor, just 65 feet below the South Atlantic, the wreck of the Graf Spee. These pictures, computer-enhanced from sonar images, show clearly the three fearsome 11-inch guns of her forward turret. The bridge and superstructure, now separated from the deck, stand alone and upright beside the hull. A shattered wreck now, but once one of the most feared commerce raiders in Hitler's navy. In just 3 months of war, the Graf Spee had already sunk 9 merchant vessels heading for Britain. 3 British cruisers finally caught and damaged her, forcing a retreat to the neutral port of Montevideo for repairs. But neutral Uruguay allowed sanctuary for just 72 hours.
The whole world stood tiptoe in expectation. Would she fight for it? Would she run for it?
It was the first big media event of modern warfare. Crowds lined the harbour as Graf Spee sailed, expecting ringside seats for the battle ahead. But the Germans had been misled into thinking another British battleship and the aircraft carrier Ark Royal were just over the horizon. Their captain chose to save his crew rather than face a suicidal battle. He scuttled his ship at the harbour entrance. For the Third Reich, it was the first sign that their policy of surface raiding against merchant vessels would not work.
This one was caught up with by 3 very much smaller ships and destroyed. From that, it was apparent to the Germans that eventually, sooner rather than later, their commerce raiders were going to be caught and destroyed.
Raising the Graf Spee will take 3 years, with plans to turn her into a museum to that first major Allied victory of World War II. James Mates, ITV News.
Now, with news of the end of an era in British boxing and tonight's other sports stories, here's Felicity Barr.
Trevor, thank you very much indeed. Yes, after 16 years and 44 fights, Britain's reigning world heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis will tomorrow announce he's hanging up for his gloves for good. The 38-year-old lost just 2 bouts during his professional career, but is now giving up, apparently on the advice of his mother. Our sports editor Tim Hewitt reports.
He was a world champion 12 years ago, and he's still #1. His detractors will say he never faced a Muhammad Ali, but he became the dominant fighter of his generation.
Tell Mike Tyson to either put up or shut up.
Mike Tyson had haunted Lewis. They finally met 2 years ago, a joint press conference descending into a brawl. But in the ring, Lewis finally laid the demon of Iron Mike to rest. Lennox Lewis won 41 of his 44 professional fights and packed a powerful punch. Frank Bruno was one of his early victims. Lewis lost and regained his world title twice. This was the second time against Hasim Rahman.
His jab more powerful.
Oh! Wonderful shot by Lennox Lewis!
Every great sportsman has his day, and Lennox Lewis has probably had his time and is going out on the top, which is the greatest thing about all this.
Lennox Lewis was born in London, raised in Canada, and invited to Buckingham Palace with his mother to receive a CBE. He'll become one of only 3 heavyweight champions to retire while still holding the title. Tim Hewitt, ITV News.
Well, it's been a nail-biting finish in Scotland in the semi-final of the CIS Insurance Cup being played at Hampden Park. Rangers took a first-half lead against Hibernian through Michael Moles. About 11 minutes from the end, Hibs equalised through Stephen Dobby to send the game into extra time, which ended with yet more goals. Hibs finally got through 4-3 on sudden death penalties. They'll now meet Livingston in the final. And finally, while most of us were astounded by Manchester City's incredible cup comeback against Spurs last night, one punter clearly had faith in Kevin Keegan's men. At half-time, with City 3-0 down, he put a £100 bet on them to win at odds of 250 to 1. He was rewarded with a cool £25,000. And the sting the tail is he's a Manchester United fan. That's the sport, Trevor.
Felicity, thank you very much. Join me again in a few minutes for a reminder of all tonight's headlines and a look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. First, though, it's time to rejoin our ITV colleagues across the country for the news where you are. Hello again. A reminder of our headlines tonight. Saddam Hussein was never an imminent threat, according to the head of America's CIA. He said his agents never suggested he was. The Bank of England has announced a rise in interest rates in an attempt to curb consumer spending. They went up by 0.25% to 4%. And the terrorist group ETA is threatening to attack Spanish tourist resorts again this year. And some breaking news tonight. A big rescue operation is underway off Morecambe Bay after more than 20 people became trapped by the tides. 2 RAF helicopters and a lifeboat are involved. The trapped people are believed to be foreign workers who were collecting cockles. One person has been rescued and is suffering from severe hypothermia. And just time for a quick look at tomorrow's front pages. The Guardian has a picture of the disgraced former Conservative MP Jonathan Aitken, who it says claims that 200 Tory activists are urging him to stand again, 4 years after he was jailed for perjury. Its main story is a leaked report into racism in the NHS. And the Daily Express front page headline is "No Justice," referring to the legal immigrant jailed for only 8 months for the hit-and-run killing of 9-year-old Callum Oakfield. And that's the news tonight. The ITV News channel will have the latest on that rescue operation off Morecambe Bay. I'm here again tomorrow night at 10:30. Until then, from all of us, good night.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by Powergen.
Hello, good evening. I'm afraid we continue with severe flooding problems in parts of Wales, the Midlands, the north of England as well. 0845 988 1188. That, of course, is the floodline number from the Environment Agency. So as far as tonight goes, still patchy rain down there in the south, a mild night everywhere, a blustery night there in Scotland. And we go into our Friday morning on a very similar sort of note. We've some decent sunshine on offer there in central parts. And then down in the south, we've that cloud, patchy rain as well. And what happens is during the course of the day, well, that heads off northwards, getting back into Wales and parts of the Midlands slowly but surely, and tending to pep up as it does so. That's all from me for another day.
Positive energy from Powergen.
They're back and ready for action. Club Rep starts a new series next.
To do when I look so on you, and then I realize just somebody else's guy. That day in September, I'm sure you can remember. That's when all the stuff hit the so scandalous, scandalous, so scandalous. What? Hot stuff, head to toe. Where you go, no one knows.
Shoes, perfume, makeup, but what about a conditioner?
Conditioner? I've got greasy hair.
Sunsilk Light Mist Conditioner. If your hair gets greasy too quickly, use Sunsilk Super Light Mist.